Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Meeting Space podcast. I am sitting here with a event and engagement strategist that really had her work cut out this year last year for her, because we are already in 2021. Welcome, Judy Payne, CMP, Director of Meetings and Travel at GameStop. Hello, Judy.
Hi, good morning. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for joining me here and being willing to share your knowledge with the listeners of the Meeting Space podcast. I greatly appreciate that.
I'm so excited.
Yes, we will be jumping in to a topic of engagement because of the such a experiential character of your show and business that you are in, period.
Right.
You have had your moving your annual event and expo to the virtual space was definitely carrying an extreme amount of weight. So we will dive into the topic of engagement. But before we go there, tell us and the listeners about yourself. How did you start in this crazy career of meeting and event planning?
Oh my gosh. It was probably in college. Back then, we didn't have the career path of meeting planning. I won't give you a year. We're just going to leave that part off. But I was working in restaurants a lot. And when I was working in restaurants, I kept finding myself gravitating to doing all the events in the restaurants. Then at my first job, I was doing more office work, like an office manager. And then I would start doing events. So I kept kind of pulling to it and gravitating to it along the way. And then found that it was indeed my niche. And it's something that I'm good at and that I love. So now here I am, 15 years at GameStop, where, yes, engagement is priority one.
You do belong to one of those, people who just stumbled across the path of meeting and event planning and just found that it's something that they want to do. And I feel that anyone who has more than 10 years of experience has that kind of a story behind it. Then anybody with less than 10 years, it's a more of a conscious choice, because I feel that meeting and event planning is becoming or has become a path, a clear career. It's no longer an office manager doing a event and meeting planning for, the board or the CEO. It's a really distinguished branch of the industry. So I feel that anybody who has less than 10 years of experience makes this more of a conscious choice when you do have degrees, and schools are also focusing more on education and that in that field. But anyone who has more than 10 years, it's just kind of, the life just happened, and here I am.
That's true.
What about before GameStop? What was your professional experience before that? Did you move into GameStop position with past event and meeting planning, or was that your first position?
No, it definitely wasn't my first. I've actually bounced back and forth between corporate and association.
Okay.
Just before GameStop, I was with the Fabless Semiconductor Association. That's a mouthful. And prior to that, I was with IAEE, the International Association for Exhibition and Events. I was there for several years. Just before that, I was with Lucent Technologies and Avaya.
Oh, very cool. Very cool. So yes, you were definitely already a seasoned meeting planner before joining GameStop. How has your career been at GameStop? It is such a, vibrant company in today's space. And I've always every time I thought of GameStop, I was always thinking in terms of innovation, new things that are coming out, especially in the gaming space. But for me, GameStop has always come with a notion that it is a company that is always looking ahead and moving along with times, rather than catching up to everybody, more of a leader than the follower. How has your career been so far at GameStop? 15 years, it's quite a while.
It is. But it feels like just yesterday. It's exciting. It really is. Like you said, we're extremely innovative. And that's not on me. That's just on our industry, right? We're technology, we're gaming, we're very flashy and exciting and full of fantastic, visionary and just experiential events. That's what we're all about. So it really presses my team to be creative, think outside the box, and come up with new and exciting things every year. And the best thing about my position is our executive team really has value with face-to-face events, and they trust our team to be able to come up with something new and exciting and really engaging, and let us kind of play with things to figure it out.
Wow, that's amazing. That's amazing. Well, on that note, let's jump into the topic. Your meetings are known for the experiential factor,
Yes.
and transforming that into virtual space, as I mentioned earlier, was probably a task cut out for you and your team in 2020. Tell me, how did you start the process of planning your annual meeting in the virtual world?
It was very daunting at first because, how do you really replicate something that's just so engaging and so explosive, right? Our vendors are incredible, and they bring these customized and incredible sets to each of their just even small training rooms. Every small training room that we have feels like a general session, right? We put that much production into every single room that we have. And on arrival day, we have food trucks and massages and experiences, and you can go get in a green screen or do VR. And there's just so many things to do that we didn't want to lose the engagement, right? We didn't want to lose that spark, even though we know we couldn't really replicate it in the virtual world. So we sat down together and we thought, okay, what can we do? How we would sit down and go through every single element of our event to figure out, okay, what can we take virtual and what do we need to drop? What really doesn't make sense? Go ahead.
No, that sounds like a great start for the process to get it started, to figure out, okay, this will not work. This might work if we find the right tools. Am I hearing that correctly?
Right, absolutely. And, one of the biggest things for us was the connections that people have at our conference. Our annual conference is around 4,000 store and field leaders that come in from across the US. And then they all come in and share, peer-to-peer experiences, learnings, see the latest and greatest games that are coming out for holiday. So it's really that peer-to-peer connection that they also find very important. So we started off by creating a Facebook group. And we invited all of our attendees to join this Facebook group so they can communicate all throughout the experience and really still have those connections from morning to night and for the length of our expo. And one thing that was really different this year is because of the pandemic, a lot of warehouses, a lot of factories were being delayed. Yeah. We found that the production of a lot of our different games were being postponed. And usually everything comes out around August, September. We were finding some things were going to be coming out as late as November. So for our agenda, we really couldn't just do 4 or 5 days in a row like a normal meeting and just do a crunch of a meeting in 4 or 5 days. Instead, we decided to drag our meeting out every Wednesday for about 8 weeks. Now, the biggest thing with that is we'd be able to cover all the launches for our vendors. That way they would make sure they would have enough gameplay that they could really showcase. But it also took a lot of time away from our store leaders, right? They weren't having to worry about focusing 4 or 5 days of learning. It was just several hours every Wednesday. So it made it a little easier for them to attend. But the biggest thing for us there was, over 8 weeks, do you lose the momentum, right? Do you lose that engagement? So finding ways to string along and pepper in engagement throughout the whole process. So with the Facebook page, and with a couple of great apps that we found online. One of them is called WooBox, and that's WOOBOX. And WooBox is an extremely inexpensive app that you can purchase that allows you to upload photos and videos and create little micro websites where you can have contests. So throughout the whole process, we would have photo contests, create a Nintendo shrine, or do a TikTok dance and upload it. That we won't talk about the TikTok dance. That was terrible. And there were so many different photo and video contests that we could do just by using that cheap little program called WooBox. And then everybody would upload everything into Facebook. And so we could really see the interaction there, right? We could see the people participating. We could see the engagement. People were making fun of each other, getting excited. But that one little program really helped increase our engagement throughout the process.
How did you find WooBox? What kind of process did you have? Was it just asking people, crowdsourcing? How do you find those nuggets that just make the whole experience completely different?
Google. We started Googling, and when you're Googling, you of course come up first with the most expensive apps that you can't afford because they're usually the ones that are the most used. So we just kept fine tuning our searches until we probably reviewed maybe 30 to 40 different things before we finally found WooBox. And learned that it was extremely inexpensive, under $1,000. I believe it was just a few hundred for a whole year's program.
Wow.
And we were able to do, I think we did about 20 different contest photos and videos through that, but you're able to change it. So you can also have people vote on it. You could have a gallery just to showcase. So just by doing a lot of research and digging in, we were able to find something that really worked for us.
Wow. By the way, we are not endorsed by WooBox.
We're not.
Yeah, we really are putting out there information that just simply worked for this particular meeting. It is not an endorsement of any product in particular, but we do want listeners to know what is out there and what has been tried and what has been worked for a particular objective. So just that disclosure there. Wow. So, Facebook page, WooBox, what else? I see from the pictures in your LinkedIn profile, and whenever the expo from the past years when you had face-to-face meetings, there was a lot of momentum, there's a lot of excitement, there's a lot of woohooing and by being together and feeding off of each other's energy. How did you translate that into the virtual space?
That piece was really difficult. We did try to do a lot of it through Facebook throughout, but we also did it through the contest. Since we're gaming, we even did remote tournaments on 3 different platforms, like the consoles, Xbox, PlayStation, Nintendo. We had several different contests where people could participate. It really increased the excitement. We did it all across the US. We also created an expo where people were able to live chat with our vendors to get really engaged during the expo one-on-one. We also tried to find all the different elements that they really enjoyed at our annual conference, right? That to just get them excited. One thing we have at conference is a logo apparel store. So our store managers can go and buy logo apparel that they can wear in their store. That's really hard to replicate virtually, but we created a website and we used SurveyMonkey to take everyone's orders. And we actually sold nearly 2,000 different orders, individual orders, across the US where people were wanting to purchase all of the swag, and we sent it out.
Wow.
Another thing with the swag is we did work with our vendors to submit swag to us, and we sent 3 or 4 different boxes throughout the process, so people would get surprise boxes at their store any day of the week. The biggest one that everybody really loved is t-shirts from our vendors. They would make custom branded t-shirts. Maybe it was Mario or Call of Duty, but they were able to wear them in the stores for launch days to really increase awareness of the launch, awareness of the product, but it got the store managers really excited. We then used our Facebook page to really showcase those launches. We would have attendees take photos of them and their staff, of everything in their store with their launches, and post them on Facebook, on our group. And then we would take all of the images from Facebook and create kind of a wow book for our vendors, so they really receive that ROI. They could see everyone wearing their t-shirts. They could see everybody in the stores engaging and excited about the product launches. And it was a nice package for the vendors, and they were really able to capture that ROI.
Wow. And just a side note here, with Judy today, I am covering the engagement in the meeting and overall strategies. And I will be diving into expo side of this meeting with one of Judy's teammates, Samantha, in a few weeks. And that will be a totally separate episode on just expo and vendors and sponsorship. So we will also have visual during that podcast. So tuning into the YouTube episode will be definitely beneficial. So let's summarize. We have Facebook page. We have the 8 weeks every Wednesday. How did that work out for you and your team? Because I know it is exhausting just to survive 4 to 5 days of an in-person conference. How is it having that top of mind for 8 weeks? Talk a little bit about that.
We were fooled going in. We thought it's virtual. It'll be so much more easier than in person. And while the program was 8 weeks, we actually continued with the engagement all the way to Black Friday. So the full length of our work was over 13 weeks long. We were exhausted, and we poured our heart and soul into this because we really wanted the attendees to have that experience, right? And so they knew that we were going to do everything they could to have a really great experience in the store. Some of the different things is we wanted it to feel like you were walking from room to room to room, just like on site, right? How you're kind of mixing it up and you're not just sitting in front of a computer screen all day. So we were able to use several different mediums in order to push out our content. Like one thing is when we have our general sessions, if you've ever been in a GameStop, if you have kids under the age of 14 or a husband or spouse gamer, you would notice that there is a TV screen up in a GameStop. So we were able to use the TVs within our stores and push out our general sessions before the store opens. We were able to do high production, explosive sound, lots of video, really cool stuff. And then they would walk back to the back of the store and on iPads, experience the vendor training rooms throughout the day, just so it doesn't feel like they're sitting in one spot for the experience. We also really worked with our vendors because, one of the best things about being at conference is typically the food, right? We have food trucks. There's always great snacks. We didn't want to lose that element. So we made it a sponsorship. If you go out to some of your favorite places to get food, mine, of course, is Starbucks. So if you go out and look at the Starbucks website, you are able to purchase e-gift cards in bulk. So we purchased e-gift cards as sponsorships. We were able to customize the gift cards. And we sent out 4,000 e-gift cards the night before an event. So that morning, everybody could purchase Starbucks on their way to the office so they could fuel up before the morning event. So we really tried to capture every aspect. We did a lot of Visa e-gift cards and sent them out for snacks. We even worked with Domino's Pizza and sent every single store across the US pizza on Black Friday.
Wow. Sounds like you really were trying to, and you achieved it. You were able to achieve the cohesiveness. That's what comes to my mind. It's that cohesiveness whenever you are in person and everybody is in one spot, because that was crossing my mind. It sounds like the meeting needed to move to each individual store. And how do you do that without losing the momentum? And that's what I feel you have been very successful in doing by creating those, everybody gets a Starbucks, everybody gets Domino's, everybody, gets something that is done throughout US in all the stores.
Yeah.
Logistically, how did you do that? Because it is not work for one person.
No, I don't know how we did it. We just did, right? That's what we're event planners. We do. We figure it out.
Exactly.
We don't have a big team. It's me, Samantha, who you'll be speaking to in a few days, and then Ashley on our team. So there's just 3 of us to pull everything off. We do work with other people in the office. We do have an event team. So where we would rely on them to help pick up some of the slack, like on the tournaments and some of the contests, they would help out. But I mean, it was a big undertaking. It was bigger than we thought. Moving forward, if we go virtual again, we decided, some of the contests that we did, we only had a few people participate. So moving forward, some of the things that didn't have as much POW as we wanted or didn't touch as many associates, those things will drop because it'll help our bandwidth. But I mean, it was a lot of work. But like I said, we worked as far as we could in advance to plan everything out and just took it day by day. If we saw that there was a gap in the engagement, maybe for a week, then we would quickly reach out to a vendor and hopefully find a sponsorship and have a photo contest. Or we even had a DJ for a day contest, and the winning playlist we pushed out on our TV channels, right? And then we sent out the playlist so everybody could jam on their way to work. So easy, smaller things like that could make a bigger impact that took less time were things that we really focused on.
Wow. So we covered so far food, we covered the
store,
swag, the store. Let's talk a little bit about gamification, GameStop. So one of the main things for your conference is gamification. So how did you implement that? I did touch a little bit on that with our brainstorming session with Samantha, but please talk a little bit about it from your point of view.
Absolutely. Gamification is at the heart of everything we do, right? Who isn't competitive, right? Who doesn't want to win? That's in our DNA. So for us, it was really important. So a lot of those things, the gamification came out in all of our contests that we peppered in throughout. We did the photo contests, the video contest, that terrible TikTok thing that we don't like to talk about.
I need to see the dance. Seriously.
Oh my gosh, you don't want to see it. We had tournaments throughout on different consoles. The hardest part, I think, for us was really having the interaction between our store managers and our vendors when it came through our training rooms. Our training rooms are very engaging. They're explosive. The vendors put their heart and soul into that, right? It's where you really dive in and learn every aspect about the new product, the new video games coming out. We're lucky that internally we do have an app that we own. We call it Level Up, and that's how all of our store managers get their training throughout the year. So we just worked on revamping Level Up, and we were able to use it for the engagement piece with the vendor training rooms. We used a lot of video. We tried not to just do flat PDFs, right? We tried to keep everything video, very high energy, great music, and really keep them engaged. We also peppered in quizzes all throughout. That way you're having to pay attention and answer and you get points. That way we keep the gamification embedded in the training as well.
Wow. A lot of moving parts to think about. Do you find it hard compared to the in-person event to track everything and making sure that things get done? Compare for a moment here, Judy, those two things. How was it planning it in the virtual space, and how is it compared to planning in person? Did you find that there was more items to track and making sure that they will be done? How did that work out for you?
I think we're all just used to in person. So you know what to look for, the flow of your event, and you can easily spot things when they're not on track, right? Because your event, what to expect, and what's coming next. With virtual, it was just a whole new ball game. For us, the biggest piece was the tech stack in the stores, the IT part. Were the iPads all going to be working? Was the Wi-Fi adequate in the stores? So being able to make sure that the training was being developed, that's one thing, right? You have your deadlines, you back out, you make sure your vendors are producing the videos, and the training department is able to plug them into the app, and the expo is going on schedule. Those things we kind of can calendar, and you can make sure you're staying on track. The unknowns were really the technology in every store. A person's individual needs in the store. Do they have audio impairment? Do they have visual impairment? Do we need to have everything written out on the screens? So it's working really individually with every single attendee and capturing their needs and being able to accommodate them remotely, that we found was the hardest thing. And making sure that they were emotionally prepared to do a virtual event. There's a lot of emotions that come into this whole pandemic and doing everything virtually. So just keeping people happy and engaged, that was probably the hardest part, along with the technology.
That was just what was crossing my mind, as there is a lot of skepticism. Oh, this will not work in virtual space. Oh, they cannot pull it off. I find that there is, I'm being curious about, how this event will look like, or that event will look like in the virtual space. But I would assume that especially I would think from sponsorship standpoint, there is a big amount of skepticism because they don't know if they will get ROI. There are some conferences that, that some sponsors might have attended. That was great. And then there were some conferences where nobody visited their booth. So I can see how a lot of emotions would be in place, especially from the sponsor's perspective. Did you find any, and maybe you didn't, because I don't know, talk a little bit about that. I'm not going to try to guess your answer.
Okay. Absolutely. And you're absolutely right. It was a different ball game, really focusing the sponsorships and trying to show your ROI, right? Because when you're in person, you can see the excitement. You can see how many people are at your booth. You can see what's going on. I know Sam will really do a deep dive into the expo when you speak with her in a couple of weeks. But just to kind of touch on that, we made sure we selected an expo platform where our attendees and our vendors could chat one-on-one, that they could really have that interaction, that we could show them who participated in their booth. And because we were doing an event across the country, we had a rolling start by time zone all across the US. So it was only 4 hours long, a 4-hour event for every single associate. But for our vendors, it was a full 8-hour day, being able to engage with everybody really one-on-one and taking the time to focus all throughout the day. But when we're talking about things like the Starbucks, right? And doing the pizzas, that was another ballgame. That was a little harder sell because they didn't really understand, would the store managers like this? Would they enjoy it? Thank goodness for that Facebook group that we created, because organically, everybody just started posting pictures the morning of. After that first Starbucks e-gift card went out, we had thousands of people posting online. Thanks so much. Here's my Starbucks. Thanks, Nintendo. Thanks, Microsoft. And posting all these great photos, giving the vendors shout outs. So we quickly looked at creating those lookbooks for the vendors so they could see the ROI. And Samantha worked tirelessly capturing every single Facebook post, and then creating a book to send to every single vendor. So after the first one, we were really able to show the ROI. And I think it was easier for her after that point to really sell the ones coming up, because they could see that the associates really loved it and they were recognizing which vendor was supporting it.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. The book, especially for the sponsors, vendors to have a tangible in their hand. Oh, wow, I can really see it. So that's a very creative yet simple thing to do. I cannot help but wonder if demographics, the age of your attendees, had anything to do with the engagement, especially on places like Facebook group. What do you think about that?
Yes and no, right? Mm-hmm. Because I think that almost everybody out there uses social media. You could create a Instagram feed, you could do a Facebook post. There are several different things that you could do. And then you could also just capture all of the hashtags from Google, right? And just capture all the hashtags as long as people are using your specific hashtag. We did target all of our contests to our demographic, right? We're all young gamers. We wanted to make sure that we were doing shrines and stuff like that, things that they could do and really showcase in their stores. But you could target that to any audience, right? You could have a photo contest of your favorite, I don't know, your favorite setup or your favorite restaurant or, gosh, I don't know, your favorite painting. You could do photo contests and even video contests around any product, or it doesn't even have to be around the product, right? Because you're just trying to capture engagement. It could be your favorite weekend activity, your favorite dinner, it could be absolutely anything just to get people talking and get them engaged.
We spent a lot of over 30 minutes now talking about, what you were trying to achieve and how you achieved the engagement. Tell me, how did the virtual platform that you chose for your meeting play into that?
Well, we wanted to make sure that people, we had several different platforms, right? Our general session we used for the TVs in the store. While we were able to have great production value, we were able to have it out loud in the store. With that medium, we weren't really able to capture who actually attended. Mm. So while it was great for our executives, we found it really wasn't great for our vendors because we couldn't capture who attended, that they were there the whole time. Our Level Up app, which is our internal training app, that app captures exactly who attended, for how long, their title, their location, every single aspect of an attendee, just like you would with lead retrieval at an in-person event. So that one we found very robust. We were able to capture everything. The same thing with our expo. We wanted to make sure we could track every single person, where they were from, all of their demographics, how long they attended every booth, but we also wanted to drive engagement. So we made sure we had a leaderboard. It was gamified, and we hid Easter eggs in all of the smaller booths. If you don't know what an Easter egg is, it's a hidden gem or object that people have to go look for. Maybe it's your logo, maybe it's a little diamond or a square, but you click on it and you gain points. So we would hide those little Easter eggs all throughout the expo to really increase engagement, drive associates to the smaller booths as well.
Wow. So many moving parts.
So many moving parts.
Wow. I'm just amazed. Let's talk a big picture now. I think we covered your conference in a really good detail, and I hope that the listeners will find some of your strategies very helpful for their planning purposes. So let's chat a little bit big picture, what's happening in the events industry. How do you see events industry moving forward after 2020?
Well, I think the spring is going to be tough again. We've got vaccines out, which is great news, but we're running a little bit behind. For us, like our fall event launches in May. So by May, we would have to have all of our attendees would need 2 vaccines and feel emotionally ready with attending an event. Our attendees roommate, because we're corporate, we do have a tight budget, everything hits our budget. Our attendees roommate, so they would have to feel comfortable roommating with their friends as well. So, I think it depends on the type of events, but I feel like in the fall, we should really start bouncing back, especially like association events where people elect to come. It's of their own free will to go. I think those are what's really going to start bouncing back first. Hopefully we'll see also events like concerts and movies and theaters and things like that. I think for corporate events, I think it'll be a little slower because they are corporate driven. They are mandatory events. It's our associates. We have to take a different approach in bringing meetings back to in person. We have to be a little more careful and be a little more delayed. But I'm excited to see those association events and hopefully all the expos coming up in the fall. That's what I really feel like, and that's what I'm kind of seeing the trend being.
I thought that let me take that back. I knew that Q1 of 2021 will not be a time where the in-person meetings resume, especially the larger ones, maybe the regional, right, smaller ones here and there. Now that we are in Q1, I see a slower progress for Q2 as well. I do side with your point of view that fall, winter of 2021 might be where we will see some emergence of the in-person events, especially a little bit larger ones. I think today I read somewhere that events can resume up to 137 people, and I forget who posted it on LinkedIn, but it's a slow moving progress.
Yeah.
I recently had a conversation, and I'm seeing some people in the industry speaking out how slow the government is to, loosen up those regulations and to really is preventing event and meetings industry to bounce back a little bit quicker. And as a small business owner, for me, it really affects my bottom line. So of course, I will be speaking out for those larger meetings to come back a little bit earlier. But I think what you touched on is very important, is the emotional and psychological readiness of the attendees to travel. And that will be a little bit bigger issue to overcome for anyone. I feel that with the success of virtual events, everybody will now start asking themselves the question, do I need to travel to it or can I attend online? Do you think that that's going to be a new kind of a standard of making a decision?
Absolutely. Absolutely. We found that when we went virtual, we were able to touch people that were never able to come before. Because while this event is for our store leaders, when we had it virtually, everyone in the store could attend, right? The assistant store leaders, just even a holiday hire that we had in the store, everybody could attend. You can reach so much more people. So I think while face-to-face is definitely going to come back, we're all eager for it to come back and we're all wanting to travel again. I think that we're going to see more and more hybrid events because you are able to expand that, right? You are able to touch more people, whether it be because they don't have the budget to attend or they're not able to travel. You're opening the door up to so many more possibilities when you're producing a hybrid event.
Yeah. I think that with that will also come a different budget for companies to look at, because it will cost more now, because you're obviously are producing two events, in person and virtual, instead of just one. So there definitely will be a change. No matter what happens, which direction it will go, it will be different than pre-pandemic. It's almost like world pre 9/11 and then the world post 9/11. It's going to be, again, I feel that this is that time where it's going to be world meetings pre-pandemic and now meetings post-pandemic. And that decision making of the attendee, I think that there will be a need to dive deeper into that, to have a successful event, to not then fall into attrition in your hotel, because that presents another issue for meeting planners. How do you plan a meeting where you do have a virtual component, and how do you predict how many people will come in person, how many people will stay back and say, I'm just going to watch it on my computer, right?
Right. I think for the first couple of years, it's going to be very challenging, right? Especially the contracting part, because we are going to need flexibility. However, the hotels will need the commitments. So it'll just be negotiating and finding that sweet middle spot, right? So in my opinion, I would go lower than I anticipated, and then hopefully pick up rooms, in the last minute, maybe not at the same hotel, but a neighboring hotel, and really work with the hotels. It's going to have to be a back and forth until we start really understanding our programs again.
Yes, I truly agree. And I hope that whoever from the hotel world is hearing this, they truly are willing to see the other side. There are so many hotels that are still stuck in the same way of doing business. And unfortunately, we just can't be doing the business in the same way as we did before, because times are different.
Right.
And as much as I understand the revenue management from the hotel side, because I spent 17 years on the hotel end, now that I'm on this side, I'm kind of like, come on, just look at the bigger picture here and just have a little bit of flexibility. I think that hotels have a big will have a big hurdle to jump over with this new way of conducting business post-pandemic.
Yeah, and maybe we need to create a flexibility clause, right? And the flexibility clause would allow us to, flex those room blocks and the space depending on the pickup as we move closer, by specific dates, 12 months out, 6 and having some sort of flexibility, but also a commitment from our side on the time frame out, just so the hotels can plan. But it needs to be, you're right, a new approach.
Yeah. Well, Judy, this has been truly a pleasure to chat with you. Thank you.
Thanks so much for having me.
Of course, gosh, you have so much knowledge, and there is just so much to share with attendees. I really am looking forward. I'm glad that we were able to split this episode into two, where I have you now, and then in a few weeks I will have Samantha talk about the expo and how did that work out for you, because that is also another part that I hear a lot of meeting planners are looking for solutions in. And that's what I really want to do with this podcast, is provide the solution out there so people can have it at their fingertips.
Yeah, and Samantha's brilliant. It will be a great podcast. Don't miss it.
Yes, thank you. And for all the listeners, feel free to, drop a comment if you have found some creative ways of engaging your audience. Drop a comment on our Facebook page, on our LinkedIn page, or on the YouTube channel. I will compile those and send them to Judy, but feel free to let us know what creative ways did you find that worked for you and your audience. We would love to hear from you. And Judy, thank you. Thank you so much. It's been an honor and a pleasure. Have a wonderful rest of the day. And hopefully we can have you maybe in a few months to see how everything else is going and where the world of event and meeting planning is heading.
I know. Come on, 2021. We have high hopes.
Right? Thank you again.
All right. Thank you so much.